Hi, it's Jill Moray from the Knitting Channel, and welcome back again to another wonderful web show. Before we get started talking about something called the duplicate stitch, I want to tell you something exciting, very exciting to me. Yarn. I love yarn. We all love yarn. This is a beautiful, it's called Lana Stop. It's a Prima Merino, which is an extra fine merino yarn that we use, that I carry with everything. But this one I just got, it's from Spain. And I got it in the sport weight to use to make your gorgeous cloche hat here. You know, I offer it in, this is berry, and we have navy and camel, and you get ribbons, this silver and navy, no, it's royal, and apple green. And now you can make it in this beautiful white. So that's available in kits with or without accessories. And this is gorgeous. I waited a long time to get this. This took so long, and then my supplier said it was held up in customs. It's one of those things. Who gets held up in customs? I don't know. Yarn. It's yarn. Let it out. But we have something going on here in California at the docks where things are taking a long time to unload and get places. But luckily we have this. We have enough for you. And if you want another color too, let me know. But this is really great. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the duplicate stitch. What's a duplicate stitch? Well, it means duplicating a stitch. So if you don't want to use the intarsia method for just little sections of color, you can do what's called a duplicate stitch. I'm going to show you an example of that, a couple of examples. So let's go down to this. This is a little sweater I'm making for my son that you have seen. This is the back, this is the front. In one area, I did a duplicate stitch, and another area, I used the intarsia method of using a yarn bobbin. You should always have a bunch of these in your knitting kit, and a wonderful darning needle. And what I did here, as opposed to here, over here, I knitted in, let's look at the back. I knitted in, they look kind of the same. But what happened here is that I followed the chart and I did a stitch on top of the knitting, and that's where you get duplicate. I will show you. So this pattern is, it's 3 across, then 5 across, then 3 rows of 7. So let's start here. Let's say I'm going to do this. You go at the bottom of the stitch, then you come around. What you're doing is duplicating that stitch. This always happens to me. This comes off this needle. I don't know why. Okay. All right. So then you come down at the bottom. Now let me show you. Usually you just go back up for the next stitch, but look at what it does. It replicates that stitch perfectly on top. So then you go inside to the bottom of the next stitch, and you wrap it around here, and you go down again. Now, do you see how that looks? Do you see that you can't even see the stitches underneath? It duplicated that stitch beautifully. Now, it makes a little thicker fiber, right? Because you already have something knit and now you're knitting on top of it. But let's look at this again. Could you really be able to tell which was duplicate and which wasn't? So I started with duplicate, and I was really trying to play with how I wanted it to look. I thought, does it look too flat? I want it like a little balloony. So we'll go back to looking at this. And you see that I pulled some stitches a little tighter and I made some a little looser. I wanted this to have like a little texture. I did the same with this one. And then I thought, well, I don't know if I really like that. Let me just knit it in together. But I think this looks kind of boring. Do you agree? I don't know. I think this is kind of boring. I like the way this is a little circle here and it has like, I don't know, a little bit of fun to it. But I decided to, on the front of the sweater, I decided not to do the duplicate and to knit it in, but maybe be a little mindful of just not having it perfect. So if we look at this again, you'll see it kind of looks a combination of both. It's a little flatter and like a little more perfect than this one, but it has a little more personality than that one. So one thing with duplicate stitch is that you can add a little bit more of yourself, because with your knitting, the tension is based on how you're breathing and how you're holding. I teach all my students, if you're nervous, like think about it. If you're really nervous sometimes, and some people's voice really goes, because the breath is not dropped. If you are nervous while you're doing this and you're pulling it tight, it's going to show in your work. If you're nervous when you're writing, it's going to shake, right? So let's think about it. Everything about ourselves and our lives can be reflected in our knitting. And that's why knitting many times can kind of show us maybe what we're missing in our lives or what we need to work on. If you need to just breathe a little more, you need to relax your hands. You need to trust that the stitch is going to come out. The stitch is going to come out. Years ago, I worked in this private club in New York where everybody played backgammon and gin. It was a scene. It was nuts. And I was there to kind of, take care of all the accounts there, because they sold food, and it's this posh little club in Manhattan in New York. And all these people from different walks of life would come in to hang out and waste time. Anyway, I loved doing the billing and the accounting, and then just sitting and talking to them and finding out what they needed. It was a very, very interesting job. But they had a cook who was fresh out of rehab. She was just so funny, and I learned a lot from her, because she said to me, when I worry about the cooking, then it's not going to come out. Before I start cooking, I just say, this is going to be perfect, and it's going to be delicious, and I just know it right now, so I can relax and enjoy the process, because I know it's going to be great. Isn't that the greatest thing to learn? They're so wonderful to learn from her. And I always think about her, because I do the same thing. Okay, before I start my project, it's going to look great. And that's why I don't have a problem when I tear out something, because that's up to me. I can keep it. We talked about mistakes in episode 1. If you haven't seen it, go back and take a look, because we talked about what's a mistake to you. I like having my knitting look perfect. But when we're talking about the duplicate stitch, I kind of like that this thing over here is kind of a little, I don't know, a little bumpy, a little more rock and roll. I don't love that this is kind of like, yeah, okay, sitting there. This has a little personality. So as I said, I added the little personality here because it's my project. So I still knitted this in, but I just a little tighter here, a little looser there, and I really love it. So I say it's going to start out, it's going to end up perfect, and that's all I need to know. I want to show you another example of the duplicate stitch. By the way, you've got to get some of these yarn bobbins if you don't have them already. And to do the duplicate stitch, where is my, here it is, these chibi needles. Listen, I carry all these things on my site. This is how I started my business. It took me 20 years to really have a whole arsenal of things that I tried and I found they were great. First I tried other stuff that weren't. I don't want anybody to have to waste their time. So I have these, the yarn bobbins, whatever you see I carry. Okay, on to this sweater. Wait till you see this. This I made a number of years ago. It was a Vogue knitting pattern. This was originally in primary colors, and I don't care for primary colors. So I said, what would look really cool? I think this beautiful, actually, I went into a yarn store and I looked at the cotton because it called for cotton. Episode 2, we talked about make sure you use the right fiber. It called for cotton, so I went to see their cotton, and look at this. Look at this beautiful, beautiful cotton. This is a number of years old already, and I've worn this, to death. This with a great denim skirt, gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. So take a look at what I did with the duplicate stitch. This called for all of these bugs to be in the duplicate stitch. So you knit the whole thing. If you see, it's a regular stocking net over here. It has a beautiful seed stitch collar. Look at that, and the sleeves also. But you do this in the duplicate because this would be a little tedious to knit in. And then there's some embroidery. The legs of these bugs are done with some, I think there's some satin stitches there in embroidery. And let me tell you something. When you have spent so many hours and so many days doing a straight stockinette, it is a joy to sit down, and now I'm going to add a different dimension to it. I'm going to take a needle and I'm going to add something there. There are also little knots and things, interesting little embroidery things. These are called French knots over there, where you wrap the yarn around a few times and you push through. You know, whenever you do a pattern that has something like this, the glossary will always show you how to do the stitches you need and what everything means that they talk about with the stitches. So don't let that freak you out. If you see something really interesting in a pattern, go read the whole pattern like you would read a recipe, and then go to the end, see the glossary, and see the stitches. But you could knit this in. They said you could do it either way, but for me it was great to sit down with a finished sweater and then just embroider these things, because also I was at will here to maybe make them different. I didn't, because I thought that they were spelled out beautifully, and the chart for this was so easy to follow. The back is simple, just plain, and the front has the duplicate stitch bugs on them. So we're back again to a running, recurring theme, which is your knitting is from you, from your hands, from your heart, from your head. There are lots of things that you can decide how you want it to be. And you want to try a duplicate stitch, it's really a lot of fun. If you want to stick with the intarsia and the yarn bobbins, that is your choice. But you have a choice. The most important thing is enjoy the process. I'm Jill Moray, and I'll see you again.